Welcome to the Tarryn Reeves Show, the podcast for elite entrepreneurs, visionary leaders, and high-impact CEOs who are ready to grow their brand, amplify their message, and build a legacy. I'm your host, Tarryn Reeves, multiple international best-selling author, publishing strategist, and founder of Automatic Authority Publishing and Press House. Each week, we dive into powerful conversations with trailblazing entrepreneurs and changemakers who are using storytelling to scale their business and impact. So grab your favorite drink, settle in, and get ready for a dose of inspiration, strategy, and the truth behind what it really takes to turn your wisdom into wealth. I want to talk about something that no one prepares you for when you start building visibility, because everyone talks about growing an audience, right? Growing authority, growing influence, but no one talks about what happens internally when your voice starts to actually matter. Why people aren't just consuming you, they're considering you. They're making decisions because of you. They're shifting beliefs because of you. They're watching how you move. And suddenly you realize, this isn't just content anymore. This is leadership, and leadership changes you. Visibility doesn't just grow your business, it stretches your very identity. And that stretch can be really freaking uncomfortable. So the first shift is when you realize people are actually listening to you, and it's pretty scary. There's this moment where most leaders will experience this. At first, you're posting into the void. You're testing ideas, you're refining your voice. Then one day someone says to you, I made that decision because of what you said. And that hits differently because now it's not expression, it's influence. I remember when I started noticing that shift, people weren't just asking about books anymore. They were asking how to lead, how to think, how to position themselves. And that's when I realized that my voice carried weight. And weight feels heavy before it can feel powerful. Because now you're not just building brand, you are shaping perception. And whether you like it or not, people start to project onto you. So let's be honest, when you grow publicly, your relationships can also change. Some people will cheer you on loudly. Some people will quietly start to step back, and some start looking at you differently. Growth really tends to highlight insecurity, both yours and that of other people. So you may notice friends who used to joke with you now maybe don't do so much anymore. They tend to measure their words. And people who once supported you now are offering criticism instead. And others may suddenly treat you like you're above them. And here's the uncomfortable truth about that. You can't control how people recalibrate around your growth. When your voice matters, people relate to you through a new lens. Some will see inspiration, some will see you as a threat, and some will just see plain old comparison. Leadership requires you to stay steady regardless. And that steadiness, that's emotional maturity, and it is really talked about. The second pressure that you may start to experience is expectation. When you're visible, people expect certainty. They expect you to have all the answers. They expect you to be consistent. They expect you to be aligned. They expect you to be confident. But sometimes they forget that you're still human. You're still evolving. You're still refining your beliefs. You're still changing. And this is where leaders start to fracture internally a little bit because there's a quiet pressure to be the same version of yourself that your audience first trusted. But leadership requires evolution, and evolution sometimes means saying, I've changed my mind, and that takes courage. Because when your voice matters, changing your mind feels risky, but staying misaligned is even worse than that. Something else I've noticed in high-level entrepreneurs is the moment that their influence grows, their filter tightens, and they start asking things like, is this too strong to say? Is this too controversial? Will this cost me in the long run? And sometimes that discernment is wise, don't get me wrong, but sometimes it can be fear disguised as strategy. And there is a difference between thoughtful and becoming a diluted version of yourself. When you dilute your truth to stay comfortable, you lose the very thing that made your voice powerful in the first place. Authority is not built by being agreeable. It's built by being clear. and clarity will always, always polarize. The question is, are you anchored enough to handle that? Next, I want to talk about the loneliness of leadership. This is the part that no one romanticizes. When your voice matters, fewer people can advise you. Fewer people understand the pressure that you're holding. The bigger the room, the smaller your peer group becomes, not because you're superior in any way, but because the decisions get heavier. And you realize that you can't crowdsource conviction. At some point, leadership becomes more of an internal thing. You have to decide what you stand for. You have to decide what you won't compromise on. You have to decide how you respond under pressure. And that right there is identity work. And identity work is lonely before it is powerful. So that brings me to nervous system capacity and visibility. It's practical, right? Visibility stretches your nervous system. When more people watch you, criticism can hit you louder. Praise can feel intoxicating, and silence can feel threatening. If your nervous system isn't regulated, visibility becomes addictive or paralyzing. You either chase validation or shrink from exposure, and sustainable leadership sits somewhere in the middle. You don't collapse under criticism. You don't inflate under praise. You stay anchored. That's what makes someone media ready, because the media doesn't just test your ideas, it tests your composure. Here's another truth bomb for you. The version of you who wanted that influence in the first place cannot be the same version of you who sustains that influence. You must upgrade internally and keep upgrading. That means stronger boundaries, clearer values, less reactivity, more discernment, and a deeper relationship with yourself. When your voice starts to matter, your integrity matters even more, because people don't just follow what you say. They follow how you behave under pressure. So consistency of character builds long-term authority, not volume, not virality. It is character. So if you're feeling the pressure lately, if visibility feels heavier than it might have used to, if leadership feels lonelier than you expected, you're not broken. You're not doing it wrong. You're simply expanding. The goal was never just to be seen. The goal was to lead, and leadership requires emotional range. It requires identity expansion. It requires courage when it would be easier to soften and let it go. So if your voice is carrying weight right now, good. That means it matters. Now the question is, will you grow into the weight or will you shrink from it? Because authority isn't about being loud, it's about being anchored. And the leaders who last are the ones who build internally as much as they build publicly. Thanks for tuning in to the Tarryn Reeves Show. If today's episode lit a fire in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a story that could transform your business. If you're ready to write the book that positions you as the go-to authority in your industry, visit automaticauthority.com to find out how we can help you make it happen. Until next time, keep owning your story, leading with impact, and building a legacy.